son or the heirs on so you have to deal with it.
One.
Oh. I'm so grateful. Okay, today we're bringing a monthly theme of minding the mind to a close. As we look at the topic, if you don't mind, it doesn't matter. That's what our talk's about today. And you're going to see how the incredible reading and the songs go so perfectly with the talk. I love when the universe orchestrates this. It's so wonderful. Better than me. And that statement, if you don't mind, it doesn't matter, was from Mark Twain, kind of, when he said, age is a matter of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. But Jack Benny, he simplified it by saying that if you don't mind, it doesn't matter. So, if you don't mind, it doesn't matter. That basically sounds very trite, very kind of shallowish, but we're going to dive into that and find some really juicy meaning in it. And our minds can be quite mischievous sometimes. You know. Plays all kinds of tricks on us and we believe it because it's our mind. And does it really matter? It matters a lot what is going on in our mind, in our thoughts, because we are creating. We can get very worked up about things that we knock them completely out of proportion, much greater than they really seem to be. Our minds can conjure up negative or wasteful thoughts from simple situations and convince us to react rather than to respond. Anyone ever have that?
Oh, yeah.
No, only me? Yeah. They can very easily make mountains out of molehills, and they readily make small things seem larger and the large things gigantic. We can really magnify a situation with our thinking, and then we react to it, and then we get physically ill from it, and all kinds of stuff. This is all coming from thoughts. We can do a great job of awfulitizing. I like that word. Awfulitizing. We can. Awfulizing. How about that? We can make things that are just like really unpleasant. Oh, yeah, I do this. When I go to sleep at night and I think about the day and I think, oh, I shouldn't maybe have said that when I said that. And there's a little thing nobody in the whole world probably doesn't know about it. And then I lose sleep over it because then it turns into this whole like three-act play of how horrible I was. That's what our mind does when we don't have control of it. So Mark Twain once said this. He said, I had been through some terrible times, and some of them are actually true.
Love that.
Mark Twain was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant. The rest of it only happens in our minds when we make up the story that goes with it. So it matters. It matters. In other words, our minds can be very, very unruly. And I think you know what I'm talking about. Now, I have kind of a longish reading here from Houston Smith's book, and we use this in ministry class, World Religions. And he's talking about Hinduism in this particular reading that I'm going to do. And meditation. But it really does apply to our everyday lives and how we function in the world. So I'm going to read this from Houston Smith. The motions of the average mind, say the Hindus, are about as orderly as those of a crazed monkey cavorting about its cage. Nay, more like the prancing of a drunk crazy monkey. Even so, we have not conveyed its restlessness. The mind is like a drunken, crazed monkey that has St. Vitus dance, if you know what that is. To do justice to our theme, however, we must go a little bit further than that. The mind is like a drunken, crazed monkey with St. Vitus dance who has been stung by a wasp. And few who have seriously tried to meditate find this metaphor extreme. The trouble with the advice to leave your mind alone is the unimpressive spectacle that remains. And this is still Houston Smith. I tell my hands to rise, it obeys. I tell my mind to be still, and it mocks my command. How long can the average mind think about one thing? One thing without slipping first into thinking about something else and taking off on a senseless chain of irrelevancies. About 3.5 seconds. That's it, 3.5 seconds. And that's long. Psychologists tell us that, like a ping pong ball, the mind must align where its owner directs it, but only to take off immediately on a jittery flight of staccato bounces that are completely out of hand. What if the mind could be turned from a ping pong ball into a lump of dough, which, when thrown against the wall, sticks until it falls off, and which is a long time? Would not its strength be compounded? Smith says, when all senses are stilled, the mind is at rest, and when the intellect wavers not, that, say the wise, is the highest state. So when we can sit in the, as they say, in the nothingness without these, that's why that heart breathing is so effective, because you don't think with this. Even though the mind is so much more, we won't go into that. The brain, that vessel that we use to put thoughts out in. When that's still, that is the highest state we can be in. That's when we can truly meditate effectively. And that entire treatise by Houston Smith was about meditation, which of course is a powerful, powerful tool. And it's a tool for strengthening. One of the things is the mind. It strengthens our mind. So let me give you another one that you can do in a moment. It's the power of a focusing question. This is effective. And this is a very powerful tool. So when your mind is overwhelmed with something that you are minding, once you notice this, because you're standing guard to the portal of your mind, as Emerson said, you ask yourself a specific refocusing question. And the question is this: what would I love here? What would I love here? I'm going to give you some examples. And it's not in a fantasy way, such as, I would love for this person to quit behaving like a jerk and just do as I would like. That's not that kind of love. Or, I would love that big bill to just go away. Not that kind of love. But given that the facts are right here and right now, what would I love right now? And just be in that for the day and focus on that throughout the day. Simple, yet very powerful. Why? Because your mind goes on a search. When you ask a question, your mind goes on this search for the answer. That is what our minds do naturally. They go on a search for an answer. So it's so important to ask the correct question. Ernest Holmes tells us in The Science of Mind, page 194, one of the most important things for us to remember is that we are always causing something to be created for us, and that whatever cause we set in motion must produce some kind of effect. We will always get an effect from our thoughts. That's how we create. Let me give you an example of the power of a focused question. This one not exactly in the direction that one would want, but this is about Reverend Michael Beckwith, who shared this in a talk a while ago at his spiritual center on himself. He said this: on his drive to church every morning, he would regularly pass a homeless man on the corner. Michael would stop and give him water and some food that he would carry, and he would talk with him for a little while. And Michael soon discovered that this man was very smart, very articulate, and sharp. Michael then started asking himself a very powerful, focusing question. How does someone like that, smart, articulate, sharp, end up homeless and on the streets? How does that happen? Not too long after he posed that question to his mind several times, he received a big envelope in the mail. And it was from the IRS with a tax bill of many, many thousands of dollars. Oh, he said, that's how something like that can happen. I think I need to watch the kinds of questions I ask of myself. He was asking the wrong question, see? And he got the answer to it. You don't want to get an answer like that. So be careful with the questions we pose to our minds. And yes, we are very, very powerful, creative beings. And the answer the mind goes searching for, it will always find. It found that answer for Reverend Michael. All empowering questions that set in motion an effect that is in harmony with goodness and life and love is, what would I love here? What would I love here? And here's the deal. Unless we create clear boundaries for the mind, training the mind, otherwise it's all over the place, like we said. A drunken, crazed monkey with a St. Vitus stance, you know, got stung by a wasp. That's how our mind is. It goes all over the place. So we try to train it. Not an easy job, but it's worth the effort. It's worth the effort. If we allow 1,000 trifling things to overtake our mind, we will constantly be upset. We'll always be upset, aggravated, and unhappy. Focus on what you would like to feel. Focus on that. And there's no greater feeling than that sense of peace that love brings. But if we decide not to give something trivial our attention, then it will cease to bother us. That's the thing. And most of the stuff that really bothers us, we don't remember it a few hours later anyway. But we were in a state when it was taking over our thought system. In fact, we probably didn't even notice it was there. We need to conquer our minds. Conquer our minds, not the situation. The situation will come and go. It always does. But if we realize that it really doesn't matter, then you can let it go. Then you can let it go. Most things we can say that about. Some things do matter, and we focus on that too. There was an article years ago in a Sunday paper, and it was about Clint Eastwood. So I want to read how he lived his life. Eastwood lives in the moment. This was written by an actor who worked with him. Eastwood lives in the moment, seems undaunted by any setbacks, and can turn any situation into a positive. He embraces everything. An actor on the set of Flags of Our Fathers says, recalling a day when 500 extras and a complement of fighting vehicles were confronted with rain, the director moved the camera to another location to shoot a dream sequence. The rain let up after a few hours, and he went back and continued on. The actor said, I mean, nothing's a problem with him. It's always an opportunity. So if we look at it that way, an opportunity, there's always something for us to learn. Truly, something for us to learn. Earl Nightingale created a program years ago called The Magic Word. The whole program was designed to help you discover what this magic word was. When you discovered what it was, you had power. Finally, after a series of activities and exercises, you discovered that magic word. Luckily for all of you, I'm not going to go through that whole long process. I'm just going to tell you what the word is. And it's attitude. Always going to come back down to your attitude. He told his participants that when they finally understood the power of their attitude, they would understand the power that they could yield in their lives. And today, let's each recognize that we hold the magic word. It really is the authority and power with which we see things and respond to things. It's the way in which we create our lives, our attitude, our attitude. So let me illustrate that point. Listen to this article that's entitled, Attitude is Everything, and it was written by Francie Balzar Schwartz. She wrote this: Jerry was the kind of guy you love to hate. He was always in a good mood and always had something positive to say. When somebody would ask him how he was doing, he would reply, if I were doing any better, I'd be twins. Jerry was a manager in a restaurant. And a unique thing once happened with him. He had waiters following him around from restaurant to restaurant. You know, when a chef or somebody, a maitre d' or manager leaves, if the wait staff loves them, they follow them. So they would always follow him to every restaurant he would go to. Why? Because of his attitude. He was a natural motivator. If an employee was having a bad day, Jerry was there telling the employee how to look on the positive side of the situation. Seeing this style really made me curious. So one day I went up and I asked him, I don't get it. If you can't be a positive person all the time, how do you do it? How do you do that? And Jerry replied, every morning I wake up and I say to myself, Jerry, you have two choices today. You can choose to be in a good mood, or you can choose to be in a bad mood. It's up to you. You make the choice. Each time something bad happens, I can choose to be a victim, or I can choose to learn from it. I personally like to learn from what looks like a bad situation. Never be a victim. I'm going back to the story. I choose to learn from it. Every time someone comes to me complaining, I can choose to accept their complaining, or I can choose to point out the positive side of life. I choose the positive side of life. Yeah, right. That's not so easy, I responded. Yes, it is, Jerry said. Life is all about choices. When you cut away all the junk, every situation is a choice. You choose how to react to all situations. You choose how people will affect your mood. You choose to be in a good mood or a bad mood, and the bottom line is, it's your choice how you live your life. Nobody can make that choice for you. Soon after that conversation, I left the restaurant business, she says, to start my own business. Jerry and I lost touch, but I often thought about him and about the choice, about life, instead of just reacting to it, choosing. Several years later, I heard that Jerry did something you are never supposed to do. He left the back door of the restaurant open in the morning. As a result, 3 armed robbers held him up at gunpoint. While trying to open the safe, his hands started shaking tremendously, and he fumbled, and he couldn't open the safe. And one of the robbers shot him. Jerry was found relatively quickly and rushed to the local trauma center. After 18 hours of surgery and weeks of intensive care, Jerry was released from the hospital with fragments of bullets still in him. I saw Jerry about 6 months ago after the accident. When I asked him how he was, he replied, "If I were any better, I'd be twins." Want to see my scars? I declined to see his wounds, but did ask him what had gone through his mind after he got shot. The first thing that went through his mind is he shouldn't have left the back door open. And then as he laid on the floor bleeding, I remembered that I had 2 choices. I could choose to live, or I could choose to die. I chose to live. You weren't scared? I asked. Jerry continued. Not at first. The paramedics were great. They kept telling me I was going to be fine. But then they wheeled me into the emergency room, and I saw the expressions on the faces of the doctors and the nurses, and then I got scared. In their eyes, I read, "He's a dead man." I knew I needed to take action. "So what did you do?" I asked. "Well, there was this big burly nurse shouting questions at me," said Jerry. "She asked if I was allergic to anything. And I replied, yes." And the doctors and the nurses all stopped. "Bullets. I'm allergic to bullets," was my reply. Over their laughter, I told them, "I'm choosing to live. Operate on me like I am alive, not dead." Pretty powerful. Jerry lived thanks to the skill of his doctors, but also because of his amazing attitude. His attitude. I learned from him that every day we have the choice to live fully. Attitude, after all, is everything. Choice is all there is. And then Ernest Holmes tells us, preparing your mind to receive the best that life has to offer. Prepare your mind to receive the best that life has to offer. Preparing your mind, deciding to let go of the things that don't really matter. They don't really matter. Draw clear boundaries for yourself, for your mind. As a master, choose what you prefer to focus your attention on, and remember to keep asking, what would I love here? What would I love here? And then remember, if you don't mind, it doesn't matter. And that's the talk.